What's up, football fans, and welcome to NFL Nexus. You know, sometimes a team makes a move that doesn't exactly make front-page news, but it tells you everything you need to know about their strategy. And that's exactly what we're breaking down today. The Indianapolis Colts' quiet but super calculated signing of a veteran linebacker. Seriously, this isn't just about plugging a hole in the roster. It's a story about old coaching connections, some pretty big statistical gambles, and really solving a crisis that they created themselves. So if you're like me and you love getting into the real nitty-gritty of what makes these NFL teams tick, do me a huge favor and hit that subscribe button. Maybe ring the notification bell. It's really the best way to support the channel, and make sure you never miss one of these deep dives. All right, here's our roadmap for today. First, we have to talk about the sudden void. Yeah, the shocking trade that kind of put the Colts in this spot to begin with. Then, of course, we'll meet the new man in the middle, the guy they brought in to fill that gap. Now, Section 3 is probably the most important part of this whole thing, the Anarumo connection. It reveals the behind-the-scenes relationship that really drove this signing. After that, we're going deep into the spreadsheets with a tale of two schemes. It's a statistical breakdown you are not going to want to miss. We'll then use all that data to project the impact for the Colts season. And finally, we'll look to the horizon and ask, what is Indy's next move? Let's jump in.
So, Section 1, a sudden void. Look, every NFL season has these little turning points, right? And for the 2026 Colts, one of those moments happened way before a single snap was ever played. To really get why they signed Akeem Davis-Gaither, you first have to understand the self-inflicted wound that made the move an absolute necessity. This was not a luxury signing, folks. This was a five-alarm fire that the front office had to put out, and it all kicked off with one very, very surprising trade.
Yeah, the first domino to fall was the trade of Zaire Franklin to the Green Bay Packers. And let's be perfectly clear here. This wasn't just some guy they rotated in. Franklin was the green dot player. He was the quarterback of the defense, the guy relaying all the plays from the sideline. Not to mention he was a team captain, and for the last 2 seasons, an absolute tackling machine who was setting franchise records. He was, without a doubt, the heart and soul of that unit. So when you trade a player like that, that's not just a roster move, that's a culture shock. It literally created a black hole of leadership and production right in the middle of their defense. So, that brings up the million-dollar question. With Franklin now in Green Bay, who is left to run the show for the Colts? Who is going to wear that green dot on their helmet, make the calls, and get everybody lined up? I mean, you have to imagine the Colts coaching staff and front office looking at their own depth chart, and the answer they saw, well, it had to be unsettling. They were looking at a room that had some potential, sure, but almost zero proven NFL production.
I mean, just take a look at the names that were left on the roster. Austin Ajiake, Jalen Carleys, a few undrafted free agents. These are guys fighting tooth and nail just to make the team, mostly as special teamers. We are talking about a combined handful of defensive snaps at the NFL level for this entire group, let alone any starting experience. The source material we used for this described the room as worse for wear, and honestly, that's putting it very, very mildly. You just can't go into an NFL season with this group as your plan A at middle linebacker. It was a true crisis, a legit five-alarm fire that demanded an immediate, veteran solution.
Which brings us right to Section 2, the new man in the middle. Okay, so with the linebacker room in complete disarray, GM Chris Ballard couldn't just sit on his hands and wait for the draft. No way. He needed a plug-and-play starter, a veteran who could step in from day one and just calm everything down. He needed somebody with real experience, someone who wouldn't be totally overwhelmed by the responsibility. And he found his guy on the free agent market. Enter Akeem Davis-Gaither. So who exactly is Akeem Davis-Gaither? Well, he's a 6-year pro, a former 4th-round pick by the Cincinnati Bengals way back in 2020. He spent 5 seasons there as a really key role player before doing a 1-year stint in Arizona. And now at 28 years old, he's in what a lot of people would consider the absolute prime of his career. This is a super important detail because our sources point out that the Colts are actively trying to get younger on defense. Davis-Gaither's kind of the perfect middle ground. He's a true veteran with over 80 games played, but he's definitely not on the decline. He brings that stability and leadership you need without sacrificing the athleticism that today's NFL demands.
And let's make no mistake about it, the Colts weren't just signing some guy to fill out the roster for training camp, they signed a player who is on the rise. His 1 season with the Arizona Cardinals in 2025, it was a breakout year. He was finally given a full-time starting role, and man did he deliver. He posted a career-high 117 tackles. Just to put that into perspective, that number would have put him in the top 20 across the entire league. He also chipped in with 5 pass breakups, which shows he can be a factor in the passing game too. So this wasn't a projection, this was proven production. He showed the whole league he can be a 3-down linebacker who stays on the field and absolutely fills up the stat sheet.
But here's the thing.
On the surface, it's a solid move, right? Makes sense. But there's a much deeper layer to this. Why him? Out of all the veteran linebackers out there, why Akeem Davis-Gaither specifically? Well, that brings us to Section 3, and frankly, the most important piece of this whole story, the Anarumo connection. To really understand this move, you have to understand the man who's pulling the strings on that Colts defense.
This quote from our source material really says it all. This signing isn't just a one-off thing. It's part of a very clear, very deliberate pattern from the Colts defensive coordinator, Lou Anarumo. You see, Anarumo was the DC in Cincinnati for years, and he has this well-established history of bringing his guys, players he drafted, players he coached, players he trusts, with him to Indianapolis. It's all about building a defense with players who already speak his language, guys who know the playbook and understand the standard he sets before they even step foot in the building.
Davis-Gaither is not the first, and I'd bet he won't be the last. Just look at this Anarumo pipeline they've built over in Indy. He joins fellow linebacker Joe Bocci. He joins the lockdown nickel corner Mike Hilton, and their starting outside corner Cam Taylor-Britt. All of these key defensive players are former Bengals who played for Anarumo in Cincinnati. I mean, just think about the advantage that gives you. In an NFL where practice time is so limited, having a core group of guys who already have like a master's degree in your defensive scheme, that is a massive competitive edge. Davis-Gaither isn't going to have that steep learning curve that most free agents have to deal with.
Okay, we are just about to dive into the advanced stats, the real nitty-gritty of this whole signing. But before we do, just a quick timeout. Putting together these deep dives takes a ton of time and research, and if you're enjoying what we're doing here at NFL Nexus, we've got a really fun way you can help support the channel. We just released a brand new line of NFL-themed coloring books, and I'm serious, they're awesome for kids, grandkids, or hey, even for unwinding during halftime yourself. You can grab one by just scanning the QR code on your screen or by hitting the link down in the description. Your support honestly means the world to us, and it helps us keep making content just like this. We really, really appreciate it. All right, let's get back to the numbers.
All right, time for Section 4, A Tale of Two Schemes. This is where we really separate the narrative from the cold, hard reality. The stats behind Akeem Davis-Gaither's career tell two completely different stories, and understanding the difference between his time in Cincinnati and that 1 year in Arizona, well, that's the absolute key to predicting how he's going to perform as a Colt.
So here's the simple breakdown. On the left side, you've got his Bengals career under Lou Anarumo. There, he was a role player, a specialist they used in specific situations, but he was incredibly efficient. His grades from Pro Football Focus, PFF, the service that grades every single player on every snap, they were consistently solid and always trending upward. Then, on the right, you have his 1 year as a Cardinal. His role completely flipped. He became an everyday starter, his raw tackle numbers went through the roof, but his PFF grades, that play-by-play efficiency, it became much, much more volatile.
Okay, I really want to park on this slide for a minute, because these numbers tell the story of his entire development under Anarumo. Let's just go year by year. Look at 2020, his rookie season. He plays 314 snaps, and the grades are pretty rough. A 40.7 overall, a 31.6 against the run. That's a rookie getting his feet wet and, to be honest, getting pushed around a little. Totally normal. But now watch the jump. In 2021, his snaps go down to 207, which means they're using him in more specific, high-leverage situations. And look what happens. His overall grade skyrockets to a 60.2. His run defense grade hits a fantastic 70.1. See, they identified what he did well, and they put him in a position to do it. Then in 2022, his snaps stay in that specialist range at 228. His run defense grade dips a little bit, but his pass rush grade explodes to a 71.2. They started using him more as a blitzer, kind of like a heat-seeking missile on passing downs. You can literally see Anarumo molding him, finding new ways to use his athleticism. 2023 is more the same on limited snaps, but then look at 2024, his last year in Cincy. They trust him with a career-high 535 snaps, and he holds his own. A 59.0 overall grade, solid numbers across the board. Look, this isn't the stat line of a superstar, but it is the stat line of a reliable, versatile, and really efficient player who knows his role inside a complex defense.
Then in 2025, he signs with Arizona, and the entire script just flips. He's not a specialist anymore, he's the full-time guy, playing a huge number of snaps. And the results are fascinating. His run defense? It stays excellent, a 66.9. He's still a thumper who can fill a gap. But look at the trade-off. His overall grade plummets to below 50, which is basically replacement level in the NFL. And that coverage grade? A 36.5 is a major, major liability. A grade like that means tight ends are running free in his zone. It means he's a step late getting out to cover running backs out of the backfield. Our sources suggest he was really struggling to adapt to a new system in Arizona and was maybe given more complex coverage duties than he ever had in Cincy. Yeah, his tackle numbers looked great on paper, but the play-by-play data shows he was often making those tackles 5 or 6 yards downfield, not at the line of scrimmage. His efficiency just fell off a cliff when his volume went up.
So this brings us right to Section 5, projecting the impact. We had these two very different versions of the same player, the efficient specialist from Cincinnati and the high-volume, low-efficiency starter from Arizona. So the big question is, which player are the Colts actually getting? And how does he fit into what they just lost? This is where the context of the Colts-specific situation becomes the most important factor of all.
And this slide right here, this is the entire reason this signing makes perfect sense. That 36.5 coverage grade for Davis-Gaither, let's be honest, in a vacuum, it's not good. It's a weakness that you have to scheme around. But here's the thing, it's all relative. The player he is replacing, Zaire Franklin, was a fantastic run stopper and a great leader. But in coverage, he was a significant liability, posting a grade of just 29.9. Teams actively threw at him. So from the Colts' perspective, they looked at their single biggest defensive weakness, covering the middle of the field, and they found a player who, even during his worst season, was still a noticeable statistical upgrade. It's a classic case of addition by subtraction. They're betting that his floor is still higher than their previous ceiling in that one critical area.
So let's kind of put a bow on this whole thing. What's the final verdict for the Colts? Well, first, he can handle a starter's workload. He's proven that. Second, his age fits their team-building timeline perfectly. And third, the real smoking gun, his absolute best, most efficient football was played for the exact same coach he's reuniting with. The Colts are making a really smart, calculated bet here. They are gambling that Lou Anarumo can unlock the best of both worlds, get the high-volume tackling he showed in Arizona, but fuse it with the high-efficiency assignment sound play he demonstrated for years in Cincinnati. If they're right about that, this is a home run signing.
Okay, so with Davis-Gaither now in the building, is the problem solved? Does Chris Ballard just check linebacker off his offseason to-do list? Well, that brings us to our final section, Indy's next move. Because as important as this signing is, it is not the final piece of the puzzle. It's a critical stopgap measure for sure, but it is not the long-term solution.
The source material is really clear on this point. The Colts are not done addressing this position. Signing Davis-Gaither was just step one. What he provides them with is flexibility. He's a quality veteran starter, which means they don't have to walk into the NFL draft in April feeling desperate. They don't have to force a pick on a linebacker in the first or second round if a better player at another position falls to them. They can just let the draft come to them. But make no mistake about it, as the article says, they will certainly turn to the NFL draft for more youth. They are absolutely going to be looking to add a young, athletic linebacker to learn behind Davis-Gaither and eventually develop into a future starter.
And at the end of the day, this is the one question that will define this move. Ultimately, the entire success of this signing, it all hinges on the chemistry between the player and his old coach. Can Lou Anarumo put Akeem Davis-Gaither back in a position to succeed, maximizing his efficiency while still getting that starter-level production? If he can, the Colts may have just found themselves a bargain and a key piece for their defense. If not, well, then they've just found a temporary fix. It's a high-upside gamble on a very familiar face.
And that is our complete breakdown of the Akeem Davis-Gaither signing. I am genuinely curious to hear what you all think. Is this a genius move by Chris Ballard and Lou Anarumo, or are they just putting a Band-Aid on a much bigger problem? Drop your take in the comment section below. I promise I read every single one. If you enjoyed this deep dive, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing to NFL Nexus so you don't miss our next one. And hey, don't forget to check out those coloring books with the link in the description to support the channel. Thanks for nerding out with me today. We'll see you next time.